Hi, everybody, and welcome to our LEAP webinar. We're going to be talking about borrowing for school, going back to school yourself, sending your children back to school, and what you need to know about how to pay for that.
Hi, everybody.
One housekeeping tip I
welcome
will
to our
say
LEAP webinar.
is
We're going to
please,
be
if
talking
you can
about
mute yourself
going
before we get
school,
started.
going back to school.
We will welcome as many comments and questions that you have. You can put those in the chat, or you can wait until the end, jot them down on something, and we will make sure that we will answer those at the end. All righty, so let's get started. And we're going to be talking about something very important, a really big topic, paying for college without breaking your budget. My name is Carol, and I'm with LEAP Personal Finance, and I'm really glad that you've joined us here today. This topic is going to be great for your families, whether it's for yourself, you're the parent going back to school, for your family, or you're planning ahead for your child's future. This is designed for you. Now, we're going to try to keep things simple, practical, and hopefully stress-free, because going back to school, as we all know, has its own stresses in store. And because this is the last thing you need, is even more stress on your plate. I would say that if you'd like some more information about this topic, about any of the topics that LEAP Personal Finance can help you with, please check out leappersonalfinance.substack.com. This is our blog, and this is where we put our latest. Our newsletter is there that you can sign up for. It will come straight to your email box with lots of information. And we are really concentrating on different topics for schools this month. August is back to school month. So we have got you covered at every stage of the game, whether you're going to college, your kids are going back to college or university, paying for field trips, different aspects of schooling. That is on our blog. So definitely check that out. That's our really focus for the month of August. All right, we're going to dive right in, and we're going to look at federal and private student loans. Now, there are some differences between the two. Before we get started in those, I'd say make sure that this is what you need before you get started. Make sure you do need to take out a loan. Are there any scholarships or grants that you can qualify for? You can go onto the FAFSA, the free application for student aid. You will need to go onto the FAFSA when you apply for federal loans, but you can also apply there for grants, for scholarships. It's kind of like a one-stop shop, and you can also get work study programs. So recommend you look at that before you go into the loans. What are some money that you can get? It is proven that students who work an average of 10 to 20 hours per week actually make better grades. And I don't know about you, but I know myself, the busier I am, the more efficient I am. It just seems that I have no choice. I have to manage my time a lot better the busier I am. So check that out. We will be putting out a list of some of these opportunities and places that you can go to look for scholarships and grants. Again, there is the FAFSA application that you have to fill out each year for federal student loans. There's also fastweb.com. There's some local foundations and grant opportunities in your area. And then scholarshipamerica.org, peterson.com. But don't worry about those. Check out our social media, and we'll be posting those this week. If you think you may qualify for any of those, definitely apply, because sometimes you get lucky and you will get something that you didn't even realize. All right, student loans. Federal and private loans are the two most common ways that people can take out loans to pay for education. Sometimes you can find some state grants or state loans, but normally it's through the federal government. And that is because the federal government, the funds that they help provide for students to go back to school, they have oversight, and they're directing these, and they have a really big benefit of lower interest rates. They also have more flexible repayment options and protections, like this really great income-driven repayment plan, sometimes even loan forgiveness. We're going to talk about those in just a second. So you can think of this as the safer option when you go to school. Is this going to allow you to take out loans for your education and pay for them in a way that is going to fit? So, okay, so I'm getting ahead of myself, but there are definitely options that for some reason you need help getting your loans repaid. They're out there. Now, this does not exist on private loans. Most of these loans are going to be coming from banks or credit unions. They're businesses, and they don't have the same intentions. They don't have the same priority. They're loans, they're run by a business, and that's how they operate. They can be used to fill in the gaps if federal aid isn't enough, but they come with a lot more risk. You'll notice red, that means risk. So their interest rates are often higher. There's your credit base. So you have to have good credit in order to take out a loan. And the repayment terms are a lot less forgiving. If you hit on hard times, private lenders are not as forgiving as the federal government and their programs are. So they don't have the same safety net. So some things to be aware of. Student loans is a big business and there are a lot of options. So do a little bit of research so that you can find this out, so that you can be aware and so that you can do the best benefits for you and for your family. All right, so let's look at interest. If you take out a loan and say you borrow $10,000, if that interest starts accruing and you're not paying attention to it, you could end up owing $3,000, $4,000 after interest. Something to think about is that the loan that you take out, if your interest does start to accrue right away, that interest, anything that you don't pay, is now added to your principal. So if you take out a loan for $10,000 and you accrue at $100 in interest, now you have an $1,100 loan, and all of that is going to be accruing interest. Interest is that extra fee that you pay for borrowing money on federal loans. So the government sometimes covers interest while you're in school or during deferment on private loans. And that interest almost always adds up from day one. So something to be aware about. Be careful of that interest. Understand what you're signing. Once you take out the loans, there's going to be a repayment and deferment. So repayment for federal loans typically doesn't start until a grace period. And that grace period is 6 months after graduation. So no payments are due when you take out the loan. They are due starting 6 months after you graduate. Private loans do not offer the same grace period. And sometimes as soon as you take out that loan, you do need to start repaying them. Now, deferment or forbearance. This lets you pause payments during tough times. But remember, interest may still grow in the background. So make sure that you have a balance, that you can make sure that you can handle this and balance the amount that you take out even when you're not paying. Your interest might accrue. Again, you're going to have this loan. You may pause any payments on that loan, but if that interest grows in the background, that $10,000 loan, like we saw before, can be $4,000. I mean, $13,000 to $14,000 by the time you make that repayment. So look at what you're doing. Look at the interest. Go into the forbearance is a great option if you need it. Sometimes if you start school, you have a loan and then you go return to school. You go back into that time where your loan is deferred so that you don't have to make any payments until graduation. You go back into that waiting until after graduation with your 6 month grace period. But again, you've already had that loan, so some of your interest will continue to accrue. Now, a good rule of thumb, only borrow the amount that you can repay within a year. So look at your salary. What are you going to school for? What is the income that you're expecting to achieve in that first year? If your first year's expected salary is $35,000, that is your max loan debt that you should take on. And what that does is it takes into consideration, you got that 6 month grace period, but how much interest and what is the loan payments going to be on that $35,000? So if you match your debt to how much you're expected to make in your first year, your loan repayment amount should fall within your budget so that you can make those payments without, busting the bank, going into debt. So when we look at forgiveness and repayment options, the federal loans let you tie your repayments to your income. That means if you're a parent earning less, your monthly payment stays low, sometimes even zero without a penalty. So your income goes down, you graduate, something happens, you change jobs, you move to a new location, you have a little bit of income, maybe you take a little bit of time off after your baby's born, your income goes down, working part-time instead of full-time, now your payments will go back. So this is a great repayment plan. Definitely something that I encourage you to look into to make sure those payments stay within your budget and something you can afford. And something else that's out there is called loan forgiveness. You also may hear forgivable education loans for service, or FELS, FELS for short. Now, what loan forgiveness is it helps cover the cost of attending college so you can graduate with a minimal amount of student loan debt. So if you work in a public service area such as teaching, nursing, government, maybe nonprofits, you may qualify for forgiveness after 10 years of payments. So you go to school, you get your loan, you graduate, you work in one of those public service areas, and after 10 years of making your payments, the remaining 10, 15, 20 years of payments are gone. They just wiped away. They're forgiven. So that is a great way. And it's just, those are areas that we definitely need people, hardworking people that want to go into. And let's face it, teaching, nursing, working for the government, it's tough work. So just some ways to incentivize people to work in nonprofits, to grow and do some good for our country. Now, there's also forgiveness programs for certain state-based or occupation loans. Recipients work for 1 year for each year of funding they receive. So if you go to school for 4 years and you only have 2 years that you needed student loans, then you have 2 years of service to give back. And so these are a great option to pay back your loans a little bit and then have the remaining balance of it forgiven. There's also student loan repayment grants, which work very similar to that. You don't have to pay your money back unless your service requirement is not met. So these are federal and state government funded grant programs. They also have programs for nonprofits and private organizations. You don't pay money back, but you do have to work it off. There is service or an employment requirement, and this may only be in certain professional roles, and it does require you for service or employment for a certain number of years. So this is something to look into. If you have a student loan, you can't make the payments, this might be something that you can look at. Do you qualify? But even better, look at this before you go in. Is this an option? Can you go to school? Can you get a degree and then have your loan paid off by service? There's people that go, you find areas that are underserved. Where do you want to be a nurse? You can go to school for nursing, take out your student loan, go to school, get your degree, and then maybe go into a place where they really need more nurses. There is a nursing or a teacher shortage. And then you work this certain number of years and your loan is forgiven. So this is a great way to get some education, get a really good job, and also not incur any student loan debt. So definitely something to take on. Now, okay, I am mentioning this here, but I will tell you this is not something that I'm a fan of. It's really something that I would say I am more mentioning this just because, it's out there. And I really feel like if I don't mention it, this is something that is going to come up. You're going to hear about this and you're really not going to know what it is. So refinancing of student loans, and this is very risky. One of the things that works against you is that you may lose federal protection. So remember that income-driven repayment plan where your payments may go down to zero if you're not able to make payments because your income has gone down below the required level? What about that loan forgiveness for working in a public service, teachers or nurses? That's gone. All of those benefits are gone. Understand the risk before choosing this. And I definitely say this is a last option. I really would rather say this is not an option. Private loans, not a good choice. Refinancing, not a good choice. We are presenting this in this presentation simply because we want you to know what they are. We don't want you to be surprised. We don't want you to go out there and hear something and be like, oh, this sounds good. It's a student loan. That's not always a beneficial act. So that is the only reason that we're mentioning a few of these things is just so that you're informed. But refinancing a student loan is really risky for that main reason that you're going to be losing your federal protections. You're also probably going to have a higher interest rates because the interest rates on federal loans are lower. So if you refinance your loan, now you're going to have a private loan. It may sound not, but it is going to turn into and that's why you lose your federal protections is you've taken this federal loan and you've turned it into a private student loan. Interest rates are higher, no income protection. So just so that you know that option, some people may talk to you about that, but definitely not something that we recommend. All righty. So let's talk a little bit about avoiding high debt and low value programs. So a high debt, low value student loan programs refers to educational programs that leaves you with significant student loan debt, but does not provide you with the earning potential to repay that debt effectively. Remember, it gives you education, but now you cannot repay that debt. These programs fail to prepare you for jobs that pay well enough to cover the loan payments. Now you're trapped in a cycle of struggling to figure out, how do you make enough money to survive with how do you make enough money to repay your loan? So some of the red flags, there's a lot of colleges and they're really good institutions and they're out there to help you and to help you get ahead. But there's for-profit colleges that are promising you quick degrees. Go to school here, get a degree fast. And unfortunately, this is taking out loans where you cannot repay it. You also want to look at schools and look at their graduation rates. And everything may sound good, but how many kids are actually graduating? How many adults are going back to school, graduating and getting into the career force? Even if it's a lower cost school, if people are not graduating and getting a job from this institution, that's going to be a red flag. Also, you want to look at programs that cost way more than your salary potential. So you remember that example, $35,000 the first year is $35,000 is how much you should take out in your loan. So you can also, I would recommend using tools like the salary calculators on the Bureau of Labor Statistics or on career websites to check what people are earning in your chosen field. See how much that's going to cost for you to go to school. Don't get those really quick degrees. Hey, we gotcha. We can graduate in this time frame. Check the numbers, see how long it takes people to graduate. And those graduation rates, they're out there. They're public knowledge, they're public information. So what should you do instead? Try a community college for the first 2 years. Go to a state university. You get the option of having in-state tuition, which is going to greatly reduce how much you're going to pay for tuition. Also look at the trade or certificate programs they had with a high job placement. Now, this is the combination. This one's going to have a little combination of a better option with that red flag. So remember when I said programs that cost way more than your salary potential? If it's a trade or with poor graduation rates, a trade or certificate program that has a low job placement rate, you want to avoid. You want programs where you're going to find a job when you graduate. So just because you find a trade or certificate program in a field that you want, make sure that there is a job for you that you're able to get afterwards, especially if it's a program that works with the local industry to help get you into that job. And let's face it, a trade or certificate program is going to cost a lot less. It's going to be your lowest your lowest loan option. It's going to cost you the least amount of money to go to school. And usually for the shortest amount of time, and you have some really interesting jobs that you can get. And you can always do something like that. Go work for a few years, save up some money, start with a community college, and then work your way through college. Now, looking at that community college, there's some key advantages to choosing this route. And one of them is lower tuition. And another one is that lower in-state tuition. So that's kind of like a 2-for-1. Lower tuition plus the in-state rate, you're going to spend a lot less money to go to college. There's also a reduced need for student loan because of this. The Federal Reserve states that 31% less debt is incurred by those who go to a community college first for 2 years than those that start at a 4-year institution. 31%. That's 1/3 less debt. So some people will graduate with $30,000. That's you graduating with $10,000 in student loans. A lot more affordable. So definitely look at that. What's also pretty cool here is that there's a lot of colleges that have an agreement with 4-year institutions for automatic acceptance. This means that when you transfer, you're automatically a junior. You're a 3rd-year student. You also are guaranteed that all the credits you take will transfer, so you don't risk losing any of your college credits that you've earned, so that you can stay on track for graduation. And although some 4-year institutions have some flexibility in how you learn, community colleges are a lot more flexible. They have evening, weekend, and online classes, part-time or full-time, and the class sizes tend to be a lot smaller. This means you get personalized attention, giving you better academic outcomes. And there are scholarships and financial aid opportunities that are out there, even for those going to the community college. So definitely something to look at. Let's face it, you can you can be a mom that you want to be a medical student. You can go to a private college that might charge $25,000 a year, or you can go to a community college with a program for under $5,000. So at the end, you still have the same job, you're still a medical assistant, but now instead of being $25,000 a year in debt, it was $5,000. So look around, see what's out there, do your homework. I know it's going to take time, and I know we're all really, really busy, especially with little ones at home, but do your research and spend some time so that you can save some money. So how do you present from paying too much for your college? Well, the biggest one is pay interest while in school. If you have an unsubsidized student loan, that means your interest is going to start accruing. So try to make at least interest payments while you're in school. Subsidized loans right now, this does change next, starting July 2026, but subsidized loans do not accrue interest while you're in school. But if your loan is accruing interest, try to make sure that gets paid. That way, when you graduate, your loan is not a lot higher than you anticipated. And remember, your education is not finished until your student loan debt is repaid. So if you can't make extra payments, use money for birthdays, holidays, side hustles, anything you can. Once you start making those payments, use any of that extra cash that's coming in to make extra payments, get that student loan paid off as soon as possible. Do the research, take the time. It's a lot. You've got to write, you got to fill out applications. You're going to have to do, ask for references. You're going to have to write essays, but do the work, apply for scholarships, apply for grants, free money that you can get that you don't have to repay. There's also community college. Go to community college for 2 years, transfer over. And any student loan that you take out, ask before you sign anything. Make sure you understand the key terms. So we have, we're going to be launching on social media. It'll be a little handout that you can use, take a little screenshot of it, and it's questions to ask before borrowing a student loan. We're also going to post this on our blog. So take that, ask some key questions before you take out your loan, and know what you're borrowing before you sign. Now, they have a really cool tool for Federal Student Aid Loan Simulator so that you can evaluate options to avoid delinquency or debt. So you're going to go to studentaid.gov, and you'll be able to go through the simulator and find out what options are available to you so that you can see what you can take on so that you don't bust your budget. So that's studentaid.gov. All righty. So what's important? Federal loans first, private loans only if they are absolutely necessary. Make sure you know how much interest and repayment really works. Make sure before you sign, you know how much you're going to pay. All right. And only borrow what your future salary can support. Borrow how much you anticipate to be making in your first year, not how much you think you're going to be making, but how much the career websites and maybe the Bureau of Labor Statistics do the research and see what people in your field that you want to go into actually earn. Explore forgiveness and repayment options to see what's available, and be picky about the schools and programs you choose. Don't trade big debt for low value degrees. I also recommend looking at some of those options. Do you want to go into teaching, students, government, maybe some nonprofit programs where you could work a certain amount of years and then walk away without having debt? Planning for an education doesn't have to be overwhelming. Start with small steps and ask lots of questions, and make choices that support, not hurt, your family's future. All righty. Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been, I know this is a lot of information to take in. This is going to be on our YouTube channel, so watch it again. Look back over everything. Visit us at our leappersonalfinance.org for more information. Check us out at Substack for more information. Again, August, we are focusing on education, so we have lots of information about a range of student topics. So look at that there. I do invite you at this time, if you want to go ahead and turn off your cameras, I am going to pass it over to my coworker, Caitlin. She's going to take on any questions that you may have. Caitlin, if you want to take it from here.
All right. So yeah, my name is Caitlin Cano. I know my Zoom thing says I'm Carolyn, but this is from Carolyn hosting the meeting. But I'm Caitlin Cano with Leap, and I'm here to answer whatever questions you may have about this topic we just covered, which is student loans and how to make sure you get the most benefits out of student loans without them taking over your financial life when it's time to pay them back, right? So we do have one question that was submitted in the chat, and the question is, what is the best place to look for scholarships and grants? And that was asked by Jay. So, all right, the process to start for looking for scholarships or grants. What I would recommend first is going to whatever school you're in, if you're currently in high school, or if you're in whatever academic program you're in, start with your counselor at that school, inquire about regional and local scholarships, and see what they have to offer. I also recommend filling out the FAFSA. The FAFSA is the the free application for federal student aid. FAFSA is the acronym. You're going to enter in a ton of information on your FAFSA, and your FAFSA is going to tell you what federal grants you're applicable for. If you can get a Pell Grant, Pell Grants are amazing because Pell Grants are like free money, and any other institutional financial aid that is available to you. To fill out your FAFSA, you're going to go to studentaid.gov and start that process there. I'd also recommend just going to different websites to look for scholarships. I always prefer scholarships before loans because scholarships and grants are essentially money you don't have to pay back. And if you don't have to pay it back, you're just that much further on your journey to financial independence. So you can start with Big Future by College Board. That's for scholarships, FastWeb, bold.org, and just scholarships.com. I recommend going for the little scholarships. Those little scholarships are very ignored very often, and people don't want to put the effort into, writing an essay for $1,000 scholarship. But if you spend one weekend and you get three $1,000 scholarships, that's a $3,000 weekend. That's a pretty, a significant amount of money. So I would recommend going there, filling out those applications for those little scholarships because those can pay off big time. Make sure you mention, especially if you are a new or expectant parent, that your current family situation is what it is, and see if you qualify for particular scholarships because of that characteristic that is unique to you. I also recommend you go to your state's grant agency. A lot of states have grant programs for residents attending in-state colleges and community colleges. So those are some good ways to get started, but definitely the FAFSA. Don't forget the FAFSA. That's kind of like the big one to get the ball rolling, and just talk to people who are in a position to help, being your counselor at the current school you're attending. Also, the university that you plan on attending or the college, go to their financial aid office, and that's their job. That's what they have to do, is walk you through that process. So that is the process I would recommend to get that going. Oh, Jay has another question. How do I apply for federal student loans? So that's going to be through your college financial aid's office. Again, you're going to be going to studentaid.gov and filling out your loan application there. It's going to be also within your FAFSA application. They're going to tell you what is available to you. But like Carolyn said in the presentation, do the federal first before you go the private route. The federal loans have a lot more repayment options and they're much more forgiving depending on your family situation versus the private loans. And you need to remember that all these student loans are basically darn near impossible to discharge in bankruptcy. These things will never go away. So as much as you can maximize the federal loans and make sure that you're getting loans that will be more forgiving to you if you have a financial hiccup in your life or you experience a period of unemployment. Go that route before you go the private loans route. So yes, that's definitely the good place to start. A question I had pre-submitted for this webinar that I wanted to address And this question was, what exactly can student loans be used for? What kind of things can we use those student loans for? So they can be used for basically all education related expenses. You want to make sure you're keeping all of your receipts to show that your student loans are being used for education related expenses, that you're not using it for something that's unnecessary or not education related. But here's a list of things you can use them for. Your college tuition and fees, your room and board, books and supplies, computers and other needed technology. So if you need one of those like fancy calculators or something, you can use your student loans for that. Lab fees, parking fees, which seems really silly, but those things really do add up. So you want to look at those. Make sure you're calculating for that. Any study abroad expenses, if you're going that route. Off-campus housing and utilities, if you're going to be going off campus for your living expenses. Groceries. Did you know this? Student loans can be used for groceries while you're in school. I definitely avoid recommending that because I want people to, figure out some other way to pay for groceries rather than out of their student loans. But it's just good to know that you won't get in trouble for that. The big thing for expectant new parents that student loans can be used for is childcare if you have a dependent child. So, again, let's use other resources we have available to us first. Let's go through and see if we can qualify for other grants, if there's discounted daycare programs, whatever it is, use those other resources first before you take a loan to pay for childcare. But you can use your student loans to pay for childcare. So that's something you should know. Car expenses, so transportation expenses while you're in school is another thing. And the final thing is miscellaneous personal expenses. So like bedding, a microwave, dining out, clothes, those kind of things. So again, I don't recommend you use your student loans to pay for, your Chick-fil-A. I'm not recommending that. But it's good to know that while you're in school, basically all of your living expenses, darn near all of them, and your education related expenses can be covered by your student loans. And then the last question I had pre-submitted was an individual was asking that wanted to make an additional payment on their loans and they weren't seeing their principal going down. So they're wondering what is going on? Why isn't my principal going down while I'm paying for these loans? This is something that they don't really tell you, and you need to know this because you want to make sure your money is being used the way you want it to be used. If you're going to be making an additional payment on your student loan, so hypothetically, you get a tax refund of that, let's say $1,000, right? You get $1,000 tax refund and you want to use that to pay down your student loans. You need to make sure you specify that you want to make a principal only payment. It's very important. You need to specify, go to the website, go to your servicer's website, whatever it is. I want to make a principal only payment. If you don't do that, what they're going to automatically do is they're going to apply that additional payment towards next month's interest. All that is going to do is delay your due date of your next payment. It is not going to be reducing your principal. And that's what we want you to do as much as possible is get ahead on that principal. Because when you get ahead on that principal, you're going to be reducing the lifespan of that loan, right? So you're going to make an additional principal payment. Make sure you make that payment online and you specify you want a principal only payment. Very important. All right, so that's all the questions I see for now. It was great to have you here. Thank you so much to Carolyn for preparing this presentation. Very helpful, good information. Yeah, especially for our expectant and new parents. I know that when you have a little one, it's a lot to juggle. A lot of information comes at you. Carolyn made this really simple and understand, and that's what we have for today. So yeah, we'll be having those other things being posted on our social medias. We'll be making sure to put those PDF links in the notes of this webinar. And that is all for right now. God bless. Have a great one.